The land had been in my family longer than any of the manicured lawns or white picket fences that now surrounded it. 5 acres of dry Texas earth, sitting just beyond the neat rows of identical houses governed by the Redwillow Creek Homeowners Association. My grandfather bought it in the 1960s when it was nothing but scrub, dust, and silence. He raised cattle there, buried 2 dogs under the old oak tree, and taught me that land wasn't just property, it was memory, sweat, and inheritance. When he died, the land passed to my father. When my father died, it passed to me. Deeds, surveys, tax records, everything was clean, recorded, unquestionable. At least, that's what I believed. I never planned to strike oil. I wasn't a wildcatter chasing black gold or some corporate speculator. I was just a man trying to drill a water well deep enough to support a small farming operation. The droughts had been brutal, and surface water was unreliable. The well company showed up early one morning with heavy machinery, and by noon the ground was trembling under the drill. At first, everything seemed normal: layers of soil, rock, clay. Then the drill operator stopped the machine. There was a smell. Sharp. Chemical. Wrong. A dark liquid began seeping up around the drill pipe, thick and glossy in the sunlight. The operator's face drained of color. He knelt, dipped a gloved finger into it, rubbed it between his fingers, and looked up at me slowly. "Sir," he said, "you need to shut this down right now." "What is it?" I asked, already knowing the answer before he spoke. "That's crude oil." The word echoed in my head like a gunshot. Within minutes, the site was sealed. The drilling company made calls I didn't understand. By the end of the day, a geologist arrived. By the end of the week, I had confirmation in writing: a commercially viable oil deposit beneath my land. I thought my life was about to change. I had no idea it was about to become a war. The first letter from the HOA arrived 3 days later. It was hand-delivered, slipped into my mailbox without postage, printed on thick paper with the Redwillow Creek HOA logo stamped in blue at the top. It cited community concern and potential environmental risk. It claimed that any subsurface extraction activity required HOA approval due to shared mineral impact zones. The wording was vague but confident, as if they expected me to obey without question. I laughed when I read it. HOAs didn't control mineral rights. Texas law was crystal clear on that. I owned the surface rights and the mineral rights. The HOA governed lawns, fences, paint colors, not the earth a mile below my boots. I ignored the letter. The second letter arrived the next day. This one was more aggressive. It claimed that my land was part of the Redwillow Creek Plan development, subject to its covenants. That was a lie. My land predated the HOA by decades. It was never annexed, never rezoned, never sold into their development. I pulled out my deed, my grandfather's deed, the original county survey maps. Everything backed me up. Still, something felt off. On the 4th day, 2 black SUVs pulled onto my property without permission. A man and a woman stepped out, both dressed like corporate lawyers pretending to be neighbors. The woman introduced herself as Karen Holt, president of the Redwillow Creek HOA. The man said nothing, just smiled tightly and took notes. "We're here to discuss your oil situation," Karen said, folding her arms. "There is no discussion," I replied. "This is my land." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "According to our records, this parcel falls within the HOA's extended boundary." "That's impossible." "Then you won't mind if we pause all activity until ownership is clarified." "I absolutely mind." Her smile vanished. "If you continue, you'll be in violation of HOA regulations." I felt a slow burn in my chest. "You don't have jurisdiction here." She leaned closer. "Everyone around here answers to us." That night, I heard trucks near the fence line. Floodlights flashed briefly and went dark. The next morning, survey stakes had been hammered into my land, bright orange, marked with HOA insignia. That's when I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a land grab. I contacted a lawyer. Then another. Oil changed everything. Suddenly, my phone was ringing nonstop: energy consultants, landmen, investors. And somehow, the HOA knew every move I made. They filed an emergency injunction claiming disputed ownership. They claimed historical easements. They claimed environmental oversight authority. Each claim was thinner than the last, but they flooded the county clerk's office with paperwork. Then they escalated. One morning, I arrived at the site to find the access road blocked by HOA security vehicles. Men in uniform, not police, stood with arms crossed, refusing entry. Karen was there again, standing like she already owned the ground beneath her feet. You are trespassing, she said. On my own land. I told them to move. They refused. I called the county sheriff. When the deputies arrived, Karen handed them a thick folder and spoke in hushed tones. The deputies came to me next, apologetic but cautious. Sir, there's a civil dispute on record. We can't remove them until it's resolved. That's private security blocking my property. Yes, sir, but... I realized then that the HOA had power I didn't yet understand. That afternoon, I got a call that made my blood run cold. The drilling company withdrew. Their insurance carrier had been contacted with concerns. The environmental consultant canceled. The bank froze preliminary financing. Someone was pulling strings. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the land that had belonged to my family for 3 generations, and I understood the truth. The HOA wasn't trying to regulate me. They were trying to steal from me. And if they thought I would quietly give up oil-rich land worth millions, they had badly misjudged the kind of man my grandfather raised. The next morning, I made a decision. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call the county. I called the police. The sheriff's department didn't arrive with sirens or flashing lights. 2 cruisers rolled in slowly, tires crunching against the gravel drive like they were entering a funeral, not a crime scene. Deputy Morales stepped out first, hand resting near his belt, eyes scanning the private security vehicles blocking my access road. He'd been born in the county, same as my father, and his expression told me he already knew something wasn't right. Karen Holt didn't wait for introductions. She marched straight toward him, folder in hand, her voice calm and rehearsed. She spoke about ongoing litigation, boundary uncertainty, and community safety. Morales listened, nodded, then turned to me. Sir, he said carefully, is this your land? Yes, I answered. I have the deed in my truck. So does the county. Karen interjected, her tone sharpening. That deed is under dispute. Morales held up a hand. Ma'am, I'll hear you in a moment. I handed him the paperwork, deeds, surveys, tax receipts stretching back decades. He flipped through them slowly. Too slowly. His partner, Deputy Klein, whispered something to him. Morales frowned. These HOA documents, Morales said, tapping Karen's folder, where did these come from? Karen smiled. From our legal department. Morales sighed. Private security doesn't have authority to block access to private land without a court order. Karen's smile cracked for the first time. We have an injunction pending. Pending isn't active, Morales replied. Then he turned to the guards. Move your vehicles. The guards hesitated. Karen shook her head slightly. One of them spoke up. We've been instructed. Morales stepped forward. This is your final warning. You are obstructing access and trespassing. The vehicles moved. It should have ended there. It didn't. Within 48 hours, I was served with papers at my front door. The HOA had filed a lawsuit claiming partial ownership of my land based on an administrative error during the subdivision's original platting. According to them, my land had been mistakenly left out of the HOA boundary map and should now be corrected retroactively. Retroactively? My lawyer laughed when he read it. Then he stopped laughing when he saw the signatures. Someone in the county records office had signed off on an amended map. That night, I received a call from Deputy Morales, not official, not recorded. Watch yourself, he said quietly. This thing's bigger than I thought. The pressure came from every direction. Code enforcement suddenly found violations on my land. Structures that had existed for years were now unpermitted. Environmental agencies demanded inspections. My access road was flagged as unsafe. Every delay cost me money. Every notice was another attempt to wear me down. Then came the offer. Karen Holt showed up again, this time alone. She parked neatly at the edge of my driveway like she belonged there. We can make this easy, she said, sitting across from me at my kitchen table. Sell the land to the HOA. Fair price. I named a number that reflected oil value, not pasture value. Her smile disappeared. That's unrealistic. So is stealing land, I replied. Her eyes hardened. You don't understand what you're sitting on. If this goes to extraction, the entire community will be affected. Noise. Traffic. Risk. And that gives you the right to take it? She leaned forward. It gives us the right to control it. That's when she slipped. Control. Not protect. Not regulate. Control. I asked her directly, Who benefits if the HOA owns it? She stood. Last chance. After she left, I did something I should have done sooner. I hired a private investigator. Within a week, he uncovered something disturbing. 3 HOA board members had recently formed an LLC tied to an energy investment firm. Quietly. Discreetly. The timing aligned perfectly with my oil discovery. They didn't want to stop drilling. They wanted the oil. I turned everything over to the sheriff's department. Not just civil disputes, evidence of fraud, falsified records, and conspiracy. The district attorney's office opened an inquiry. Subpoenas were issued. The HOA panicked. Security doubled. Signs went up claiming HOA property. My fence was vandalized. Someone cut my power line one night. That was the moment it crossed from corruption into criminal intimidation. I called the police again. This time, they didn't come politely. They came with warrants. The warrants were executed at dawn. I didn't see the raids myself, but by the time the sun cleared the horizon, the entire county was buzzing. Sheriff's cruisers lined the parking lot outside the Redwillow Creek HOA office. Unmarked vehicles came and went. Cardboard boxes filled with files were carried out under the watchful eyes of deputies. Karen Holt's name was on everyone's lips, whispered with the same tone people used for fallen politicians. By mid-morning, my phone rang nonstop. A local reporter left a voicemail asking for comment. An energy consultant called to ask if the project was still viable. My lawyer told me to say nothing to anyone. So I sat on my porch and watched helicopters pass overhead, feeling the strange calm that comes when a fight you didn't choose finally turns in your favor. The first arrest came that afternoon. Not Karen. It was the county records clerk. The amended plat map, the document that supposedly pulled my land into HOA jurisdiction, was a forgery. Not crude, not sloppy, but surgically precise. Digital timestamps had been altered. Signatures copied. The clerk confessed within hours. He'd been promised a job after retirement. A consulting role. Safe money. The second arrest came 2 days later. An HOA board member named Daniel Reeves, the one who had pushed hardest for community control, was taken in for questioning and never walked back out. His lawyer tried to spin it as a misunderstanding until bank records surfaced showing wire transfers from an energy investment firm into an account controlled by his LLC. That's when the DA went public. A press conference was held on the courthouse steps. Fraud. Conspiracy. Abuse of authority. The words hit the evening news like a thunderclap. Redwillow Creek HOA was no longer a neighborhood nuisance, it was a criminal enterprise. Karen Holt disappeared. Her house sat dark at night. Her car vanished from the driveway. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Some neighbors said she'd gone to stay with family. Others whispered she'd fled the state. The sheriff's department didn't comment. The lawsuit against me collapsed in less than a week. The injunction was denied. The amended maps were voided. My land was officially reaffirmed as mine, surface and mineral rights, clear and absolute. The county issued a public apology. It didn't mean much, but it was on record. Drilling resumed under heavy oversight. Real oversight. Environmental safeguards. Law enforcement presence. Everything by the book. The first test extraction confirmed what the geologists already knew, the deposit was even larger than initially estimated. Millions. Maybe more. The HOA tried to save itself. Emergency meetings were held. Board members resigned. New leadership promised transparency. It didn't matter. Civil lawsuits poured in from homeowners who had been assessed illegal fees and misled for years. The HOA's insurance refused coverage due to criminal conduct. Then Karen resurfaced. She was arrested at a motel 2 counties away, using cash, no ID. When they brought her in, she didn't scream or protest. She just looked tired. During interrogation, she denied everything at first. Then the investigators laid out the evidence, the forged documents, the financial trail, the emails where she explicitly discussed acquiring mineral assets through administrative pressure. She asked for a lawyer. I was subpoenaed to testify. Walking into the courtroom felt surreal. The same land they tried to take was now the reason the entire HOA was on trial. Karen sat at the defense table, hair pulled back, eyes hollow. When she looked at me, there was no anger left. Only calculation and regret. I told the truth. Every letter. Every threat. Every night I'd sat awake wondering if I'd lose everything my family built. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. The judge ordered restitution, dissolution of the HOA's current governing body, and referred additional charges to the state. Karen Holt was led away in cuffs, heels clicking against the courtroom floor like a countdown ending. Outside, reporters asked me how it felt. I didn't feel victorious. I felt grounded. Back on my land, the oak tree still stood. The soil still smelled the same. Oil had changed my future, but standing up for what was mine had changed something deeper. It proved that power, even when dressed up as community authority, still breaks when it's built on lies. And I thought it was over. I was wrong. Because the oil hadn't just exposed the HOA. It had attracted bigger eyes. The silence after the trial didn't last long. 2 weeks after Karen Holt was sentenced, a black sedan rolled slowly down my gravel road and stopped at the gate. No logos. No introductions shouted from the window. Just a man in a tailored suit who stepped out like he already knew the answer to every question I might ask. He introduced himself as a representative of an energy consortium. Not a company, a consortium. His words were smooth, carefully chosen, like they'd been tested in 100 boardrooms before reaching my porch. "We'd like to make you an offer," he said. I didn't invite him inside. The number he quoted was life-changing. More money than my family had ever seen. Enough to disappear quietly and never worry again. He spoke about partnerships, about efficiency, about how small landowners often underestimate the burden of development. I told him no. His smile faded, just slightly. "Think carefully," he said. "Opportunities like this don't come twice." After that, the pressure changed shape. No more HOA letters. No more fake surveys. Instead, it was inspectors, state, federal, environmental, arriving one after another. Each inspection was legitimate on paper, but the timing wasn't accidental. Delays piled up. Permits slowed. Equipment sat idle while meters ran. Then the anonymous calls started. Late at night. Breathing on the line. One voice told me I was in the way of progress. Another suggested accidents happened on isolated land. I reported every call. The sheriff took it seriously this time. Patrols increased. Cameras went up. My lawyer advised me to hire private security. That was when I understood the truth. The HOA had been greedy amateurs. The oil had drawn professionals. The state stepped in next. Because of the size of the deposit, regulatory authority shifted upward. Hearings were scheduled. Committees reviewed my case. I sat in rooms filled with people who spoke about my land like it was already theirs. One official suggested eminent domain. That word hit harder than any threat. They framed it as public interest. Energy independence. Infrastructure. Compensation. Legal. Clean. But I knew the history. Eminent domain had a way of favoring corporations wrapped in public language. I fought it. I hired experts. Environmental scientists. Property rights attorneys. I testified again, this time not against criminals but against policy. I showed how my operation met every requirement, how forced seizure would set a dangerous precedent. The media picked it up. Not because I was special, but because the story had everything. Corruption. Oil. A private citizen standing alone. Public opinion shifted. Politicians grew cautious. Then something unexpected happened. One of the major corporations involved withdrew. Quietly. A week later, another followed. My investigator found the reason: leaked documents. Internal emails showing plans to pressure me into selling below value after regulatory exhaustion. Someone on the inside had decided not to play along. The eminent domain proposal died in committee. For the first time since the oil surfaced, I slept without fear. Production finally began at full scale under my control. Revenue flowed. I set up trusts for my family. I funded local schools. I repaired roads the county had ignored for years. The same community that once looked at me with suspicion now waved when I drove past. And the HOA? It never recovered. Redwillow Creek dissolved its governing body permanently. Homeowners took control back. The signs came down. The private security disappeared. What remained was a quiet neighborhood forced to reckon with how easily authority can turn predatory when no one pushes back. Sometimes, at sunset, I walk the land and think about how close I came to losing it, not to chance, not to law, but to confidence. The confidence of people who believed they could take what wasn't theirs because no one ever stopped them before. They were wrong. And the oil? It made me wealthy. But standing my ground made me free. Time did what courts and contracts never could. It revealed what was real. A year after full production began, the land no longer felt like a battlefield. The machinery ran on predictable schedules. The flare stacks burned clean and controlled. Inspectors came and went without hostility. What had once been a source of fear became routine, and routine brought peace. But consequences lingered. Karen Holt's sentencing was finalized quietly. No cameras. No speeches. She received prison time for fraud and conspiracy, along with a permanent ban from holding any fiduciary position in the state. The other board members scattered, some settled civil cases, others lost everything fighting them. The county clerk who altered records became a cautionary tale in local government training sessions. Redwillow Creek itself changed. Without an HOA, neighbors learned something uncomfortable but necessary: responsibility. Lawns looked different. Some fences came down. People argued face to face instead of through letters and fines. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Sometimes, I think losing centralized control gave them back something they didn't realize they'd surrendered. As for me, wealth arrived slower than expected. Oil money doesn't come all at once. It comes in statements, taxes, negotiations, reinvestments. I hired accountants who spoke in numbers too large to feel real. I learned how quickly money attracts opinions. Everyone had advice on what I should do: expand, sell, leverage, disappear. I didn't. I stayed. I rebuilt my grandfather's house instead of replacing it. I left the oak tree standing. I placed a small plaque near the well site, not to celebrate oil, but to mark the boundary where my family had drawn a line and refused to move it. Sometimes reporters still call. They ask if I regret calling the police instead of settling quietly. I never hesitate. If I'd sold early, the HOA would have won. If I'd stayed silent, corruption would have stayed invisible. If I'd believed authority without proof, my family's land would be a footnote in someone else's profit report. Calling the police wasn't about escalation. It was about refusal. Refusal to be bullied by paperwork. Refusal to surrender property to confidence instead of law. Refusal to let quiet intimidation pass as community governance. The land remembers those choices. When I walk it now, I don't see oil first. I see survey lines my grandfather walked. I see the place my father taught me how to read a deed. I see the ground where people in power learned too late that ownership isn't declared. It's defended. Oil changed my life. But the fight changed my understanding of it. And if anyone ever asks me what I did when they tried to take my land, I tell them the truth. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't run. I picked up the phone. And I called the police.